A lot of people ask me that, Luke, why is the loss of love or betrayal or hurt or death so difficult for us emotionally? And there is an explanation. You don't have to blame yourself always. It's a chemical thing. Let me explain this to you. We have neurotransmitters in our body. You would have heard of most of them, but we're going to specifically focus today on dopamine and oxytocin. What is oxytocin? It's a feel-good hormone. It's also called a love hormone. It's called a cuddle hormone. It's created with touch, with physical touch, or a kiss, or a hug, or when a baby is in the arms of a mother, or when you have a pet and you're playing with the pet, cuddling the pet. Why do you feel so good? That comes from oxytocin. Dopamine is a reward molecule where we want to do more and more because we feel rewarded. So someone compliments you, or someone appreciates you, you naturally want to do more and more of that because of dopamine. So you play video games, level 1, you achieve level 2, you have a reward, a sense of feeling that you've achieved level 2, now level 3, now level 4. Now if the video games become too easy for you, it's boring because now dopamine is no longer produced. You constantly need reward mechanisms to be functionable. So that's why you bring children up with rewards. You give them a reward if they do well. You give them a reward if they achieve something, so they want to do more and more. So understand dopamine and understand oxytocin. Now, whenever you're in love, this is not just with a partner, it could be with a parent, it could be with an animal, it could be with a friend. That's the feeling. It's a universal feeling, love. Initially, there is a lot of dopamine and there is a lot of oxytocin. In any relationship, there is a lot of this, which is why if you realize, even if you have a great upbringing and family and all, you'll still tend to take your parents for granted sometimes. Why does this happen? Because over time, you have your parents around all the time. Dopamine is set, oxytocin is set, but sometimes when you're really low and you want a hug from your mom or your dad or your brother, your sister, it feels so good. Oxytocin again, dopamine. So that's why when you have the honeymoon period in relationships, understand this really well. Every relationship goes through it. So when the start of the relationship happens, there's uncertainty, there is intrigue, there is wonder, there is awe, there is physical touch, there's chemistry. All of this producing oxytocin and dopamine at very, very high levels, which is why you want to be more physically intimate once you are physically intimate the first time. Or there are lots of compliments and all the lines like, I would die for you, I would do anything for you, and all of that stuff happens in the start of the relationship because you are primed with dopamine and oxytocin. It's not you, it's a chemical thing. That's why if you're 10 years in a relationship now, or 5, or for some people even 2 months, you don't say the same things that you did initially. It starts to change. Why? Again, it's a chemical thing. Now, at the start of the relationship, oxytocin and dopamine is high. Both partners, both friends are trying to make the relationship work. There are gifts, there are hugs, there are kisses, there are the sweetest things said, there are dates, there are dinners, there are lunches, there's lovemaking, there's all of that happening. Okay? Now, as you do more and more of this, remember the video game, right? Dopamine and oxytocin will start to automatically get lesser and lesser. Okay, this doesn't change anything, which is why to build a healthy relationship, whether it's a marriage, love, friends, parents, you need to constantly be building new sources of oxytocin and dopamine. Because like level 1 in the game is gone. It can't serve you anymore. You need the level 2, the level 3, the level 4. So it's the same thing. So now couples start to get more mature. So you find other ways over lovemaking, over hugs and kisses, over gifting, over complimenting. You find other ways to keep the dopamine and the oxytocin high. But if you don't find those other ways, then you'll have conflict. That, oh, at the start of the relationship, the sex was so good. At the start of the relationship, you complimented me so much. We went for dates. We went all... It dies down automatically. It's a chemical thing, and sometimes it's a real life thing. You just get bored of your partner, you get bored of your friend, or vice versa. Don't confuse the two. But that's why maturity requires, in every relationship, whether it's at work, home, lovers, whatever, to constantly look beyond the oxytocin and dopamine producers. What else produces it? And that's why relationships that mature over time, they find other things to keep it going, that keeps the oxytocin and the dopamine going. But if people don't put in that effort, the initial dopamine and oxytocin sources start to burn out. So if the sex starts reducing, or the appreciation, or the doing things that you did before starts to reduce, and you've not replaced it with something else, there is going to be conflict. There is going to be emotional conflict, blame, sadness, and that comes in with the start of this whole sadness. So when the love is taken away from your life through death, through hurt, through betrayal, through the loss of a loved one, what happens? Your brain already remembers the neural pathways that were built with the source of oxytocin and dopamine. You would remember the kiss, you would remember the hug, you would remember the appreciation, the little things that the person did for you. Now, that can never happen again because it's gone. So those neural pathways are so strong in your mind, but it cannot produce it. So you are left with a residual emotion of sadness because the brain wants it, you want it, but the source isn't there anymore. And that is why you have sadness. Now you can feel sad for a while. You can feel depressed for a while, but your only way out is going to start to look to create new sources of dopamine and oxytocin, which is you start talking to other people, meeting new people, spending time with loved ones, taking a hobby. The easy way out are drugs, alcohol, and at that point in your life, it will be the easiest way to kick dopamine in your mind. A drink, 2 drinks, a joint, 2 joints, some M, some E, all of that. Super amount of dopamine to your head. You're going to feel amazing. But what happens when the dopamine comes down? Now you're going to want more of it, and that's the start of addiction to anything. Addiction to sex, addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol, addiction to shopping, video games, any vice. But that is the fine distance that we have to keep between vices and real life. So if I'm going to be stuck in sadness and I'm not creating new sources that can stimulate dopamine and oxytocin, that sadness is going to become depression. And we need to understand that only we can be responsible to create those new sources. You can take therapy, you can take help, all of those things. Some people will need medication. I'm not against medication, but understand medication can't create the sources that can heal you, that you need to do. So while you take your meds, the fundamental to coming out of sadness, depression, hurt, betrayal is you need to put the effort in to build those new sources which are healthy for you, that fulfill you, that serve you, not devices, that can now create dopamine and oxytocin. Because guess why? It is a chemical thing at the end of the day. It is a chemical thing. If it could work in the beginning, it will also work in the end. And that is the power of understanding neurotransmitters, the power of your mind, and that chemistry exists in our body. Love has chemistry. It also has intimacy. All human emotions have everything, including anger. That's why sometimes when you're very, very angry, but you have someone very calm around you who can calm you down, who can forgive you and understand, you feel bonded to that person because of oxytocin. There's the element of understanding. So all human emotions have the ability to play around with our neurotransmitters for our good or to destroy us.